Casino workers of Reddit, what's the worst loss or worst case of gambling addiction you've seen? Well, I have 16 years in the casino business. I was a dealer for about 3 years and a pit boss for 9. The saddest thing I had witnessed happened over time. There was a genuinely very nice couple that came in and played Let It Ride. The game is atrocious odds-wise, utterly boring, and I was always miserable dealing it. The woman was in her early 50s, quite overweight, and wheelchair-bound, and the husband was very thin and mousy. The husband was always the one to play, and the wife would sit behind him. They didn't even bet heavily, but they were there 7 days a week for hours and hours a day, weeks in a row. As time went on, they stopped being as nice to the staff and to each other. They were both obviously not taking care of themselves as they had been, hygienically speaking. Eventually one night, the husband turned around to ask the wife for more money, and she absolutely broke down in a shaking, sobbing fit. Just uncontrollably, inconsolable. He was pretty demanding and she was slow handing over the last couple of 20s out of her purse, and she said, "Tom, this is it, if you lose this we won't eat this month." I absolutely refused to take the money, called my supervisor over and explained the situation, and thankfully, unlike a lot of joints, they backed that decision up. That was very early on in my career, and it really hit me hard that I had taken tens of thousands of dollars from those people. If I remember right, we evicted them lifetime and connected them with the state problem gambling service. When I was a pit boss, watching a table in high limit, I saw a guy buy in for $5,000 and run it up to about $250,000 by the time I went home. Badass run. So I come back in the next day at 5 p.m. and the guy is still there. Not surprising. The guy has about $125K in chips in front of him, so I say, "Oh man, Dave took a bit of a thumping while I was sleeping." The pit boss I was relieving was standing off to the side making the stop talking gesture, so I chuckled and went over to get him relieved. Turns out the guy had given it all back, and was in $350,000 more. Oof. Probably the craziest thing I had seen in all of those years was a guy, again in high limit, I was there all the damn time once I was a pit boss, who got beat up all night. Just hours of just getting thumped. After a particularly nasty beat on some splits and double downs, he said, "I lose one more hand, I'm shitting on the floor." I informed him that would be a super bad idea and went over to call surveillance and security. It was right at the end of a shoe, so this I'm calling while the dealer is shuffling. Security is up there close, but not too close. Surveillance is watching. First hand out of the shoe, dealer 10, peeks, rolls over the ace. Quicker than I could blink, the dude has his pants down grunting. Gaming commission and security were none too happy arresting the guy, but I was entertained. Ex-Aussie dealer here as well. Had a semi-regular play on my table, and it was pretty much one-on-one the entire night. They had been losing, but not an astronomical amount, maybe around 5K loss. I hadn't seen them for about a year but didn't think much of it because of rotating shifts, games, and areas, etc. Got to the point in the night where the pit was closing, so around 3 a.m., and they were pleading my supervisor to keep the table open so they could win back some of their money. The supervisor was having none of it with a too bad so sad kind of attitude. Wasn't the best customer service, but it was the end of the night and we had other $50 tables open they could go to. They then asked if they could get a complimentary room to stay, as they were one of the higher tier members and they had dropped a bit of money. I think they assumed they had played enough to have gotten enough membership points to cover a room. Turns out they didn't and couldn't get a room for the night. They then broke down when they realized they didn't have enough money to get a cab home. They then proceeded to tell me how they had excluded themselves from the casino, which explained why I hadn't seen them for a while, as well as how they had spent so much time and money going to counseling, and now they were back at the casino and was so disappointed in themselves. They then told me their legitimate fears about their just turned 18-year-old daughter potentially picking up a gambling problem as well, because unfortunately the casino was a night-out destination at the time, so the exposure was there. They were saying all of this while crying with their head down. The whole thing was devastating to watch, and I asked if they wanted to request gambling help. I also told my pit manager that they needed help. He just looked at them, locked up my float and walked away. They didn't request any gambling help, and unfortunately you couldn't exclude someone from the casino at the time unless they voluntarily requested it. Despite the clear admission of having gambling problems, the conditions where a casino would step in to support someone was limited to them voluntarily requesting help. Was hoping so much that they would say the words to request help, but they didn't. They got up and walked away with their head down, and I think it was the last time I ever saw them. They seemed like a legitimately nice person, especially compared to other regulars. This was probably a decade ago, and I still think about how they're doing every so often. Fortunately, I moved on from the casino and am no longer in that industry. Even before this incident, I was already 1 foot out the door. It's a horrible place to work in, though the pay was comparatively good and gave me financial freedoms that I likely wouldn't have gotten elsewhere. It was always a bit of a moral dilemma for me. Had a guy sit down at a $15 table and turn $200 into $13K in about 30 minutes. He kept pressing and kept winning. Before long he had a small crowd and full barrel of $500 chips and was working on a second. I finished the shoe and told him that he beat the casino and it was time to run away and never come back. Instead of walking he starts playing 3 hands at $1,500 each, 3 table losses in a row, and he'd given it all back and started making trips to the ATM. Next thing you know, he was down about $2,500 and sobbing to the pit boss because he'd spent everything he had and couldn't get out of the parking garage. He was given a parking voucher and put himself on the banned list. Felt sick for the guy. Also watched a few jackpots get zeroed out for child support, but those always got a laugh from the table. I know a guy, a friend of a friend, that has an awful gambling problem that cost him his marriage. Prior to that, years ago, we were both invited to the common friend's bachelor party in Atlantic City. He had shit credit back then and was strictly a cash and carry guy. He brought $2,000 cash with him to cover his half of the room he was splitting, meals and drinks, and gambling. We were walking through the casino to check in and he peeled off from the group. He showed up at the check-in desk and said, "I just lost all my money on roulette. Can you guys cover me for the weekend?" Apparently he had a feeling while walking past a roulette table and threw all his money on red and lost. We were 3 hours from home and faced with supporting this leech for 2 days. The guys who knew him well had seen shit like this from him before and basically told him he'd get basic food and a place to sleep. No steaks, no booze, and most importantly, no gambling money. He was so pissed off that he called his dad and made him drive to Atlantic City to pick him up. Guy started with $300 and could do no wrong. When he got up to $5,000, we asked if he wanted to go to a high rollers pit because people would jump in on his game and mess him up. He said yes if I followed him there. In the high rollers pit he again could do no wrong, but what he was doing was chasing and bets he lost with higher bets. This worked out for him for a long time. He got up to almost 100 grand of $300 bucks. He called his girlfriend to get packed. They are going to Vegas to get married. He started losing. I told him to stop when he got to 80,000. He told me he just lost 20 grand and if he made it back he would quit. I told him he won 80, stop. By the time the girlfriend got there he lost it all and had $3,000 in markers. When she got there he got up and held her and cried. Worked in finance at a casino. We had access to everyone's lifetime win, it's always called win, and I ran a query one day to sort players with over $100,000 in lifetime winnings, and it was 300 or so players, mostly blackjack and baccarat players. Did it for people with over $100,000 in lifetime losses. Over 4,000. So casinos budget based on theoretical win, Theo for short, and it's an estimate of how much a player will lose on every trip. It's insanely accurate. Like by 10 trips we have a pretty good idea of what type of player you are and will market to you accordingly to bump you to that next level. Oh, you lose on average $350 a trip, I bet free meals will get you to $500. And it does. Those players' cards? They track everything. So we know that you spend $350 a trip but you get comped $200, leaving a profit of only $150 a trip. Well, that's going to drop your comps down a level so your expenses drop. Daily reports would come out with people whose expenses equals average daily Theo. Casinos, if you can handle the guilt, are a great place if you love analytics. I miss it that portion of it, but I have a conscience and explicitly marketing to fresh off the boat Asians left me with a bad taste in my mouth, and I left after less than a year. I saw people lose $10 million a year, and this was a local regional casino in upstate New York. Worked at a casino in Biloxi, Mississippi as security. One college-aged girl broke down when she realized at the ATM she pulled all her saving out and had spent it all too. The wild amount of people willing to soil themselves not to leave the game they are playing. 3. Lady refused to move so we could swap out the cash box on the slot machine so it would take more money. When she finally did move, refused the machine back saying we reset it. Young woman asked if she could take it and we told her go ahead. Instantly hit the 777s. Original lady lost her mind claiming it as hers. 4. Did I mention people soiling themselves? One just had to be escorted out with poop trailing out of his pant leg. Told to go to his hotel, shower, sleep, and then he would be welcomed back. He was back 30 minutes later after a trip to Walmart for clothes. He was told never to come back. 5. One of our regular whales we hadn't seen in a while tried to rob one of the tables of the high-value chips and got tackled in the marina. Good ending. Lady who had just declared bankruptcy, I think from divorce, was brought in by her friends to cheer her up, won several million on a progressive slot machine. She left crying, trying to figure out how she was going to deal with everything after her bankruptcy had just been finalized. I was a security guard at a casino once, some 10 years ago, and there was this old man who shit himself while playing through the night. I was not the one who handled it, but he had asked for a rubber band so he could put it around his pant leg at the bottom to hold his shit in his pant leg so it wouldn't fall out to the floor. He did get kicked out and couldn't understand why. Not a casino employee, but we got a call at work one night for a check the well-being. It was casino security requesting us to check on subject who had lost a lot of money at their tables. The security manager advised that the subject left and was heard making a comment about wanting to end their life due to their losses. Thankfully, I got to the address and was able to speak with subject. They were embarrassed but eventually told me that they had a gambling problem and that this wasn't the first time. They ended up getting transported to the hospital and then eventually spoke with one of our social workers, who was able to get her in therapy. Last I saw them, they had got out of debt and started her own business. Not a casino worker, but I was a poker pro for a while. There was a guy at one of my smaller home games who would always come in and lose multiple buy-ins. He had a good job and the game wasn't crazy big, so nobody worried that much about him. Then he started playing table games at an online casino. He'd be playing blackjack on his phone while he was playing poker with us, and he kept showing us these hands where he was winning or losing more on a single hand than he was losing all night at the poker game. We started to get worried, and it turns out he had gambled away his entire life savings. He had cashed out all his retirement, emptied his joint bank accounts and never told his wife. It was high six figures. She left him immediately and he stopped coming to the games. I still don't know what happened to him. In hindsight, that was the moment that I stopped enjoying poker. I always enjoyed taking money from suckers, but when I saw that, I don't know. It wasn't the same. It's a real sickness. I feel for those people. I'm not a casino worker, however I worked at a gas station that sold scratch tickets. I was doing a 3 to 11 p.m. shift on a Friday, and about 9 p.m. this guy comes in all hyped up that he got paid and wanted to buy some $10 scratchers. Not a problem, I say, and go to grab 5 of the $10 tickets he asked for. He stops me before I can get them out and says, "No, I want to pick. I have a system with the numbers." Cue my eye roll and exasperated internal sigh as these guys take forever. 5 minutes later he is rung up and heads not out of the store, no, to the ticket stand at the back to scratch them. He comes back 10 minutes later, wants me to check them for him, so I do. I can't recall if he won anything or not on these 5. But if he did, it wasn't enough. He goes for round 2 of the same thing, 5 more $10 tickets, same hyped up energy, same process of picking and scratching. This continues for an hour and a half, all the while he is getting more and more anxious, and as his hype was replaced with this deranged fear. The process became faster as he started panicking and picking faster and faster as he spiraled down a pit, and I was talking to him, telling him that it's okay to stop and no one is guaranteed to win and there is no system after the second round, to deaf ears. In total he bought all our $10 scratchers, but one lost and lost about $600. I got to listen to him call his girlfriend and explain he lost the rent money and hear her yell at him, knowing exactly what happened. I got to listen to him call his boss legit crying, asking for help. It was sad. Anytime I feel like gambling I think of that guy and I make another choice. Shit ruins lives for people who can't control it. Oh, here goes. So Indian casinos were sort of a new thing back in the mid-1990s. Not any locals knew the rules of gambling, so they were like babes in the woods. Well, one busy Saturday night some wannabe local redneck hotshot rolled in with his wife in his big fancy pickup, and all their friends, and had a pretty good evening. They won a couple grand on the newbie blackjack tables. House DGAF, because the whole batch spent like $5,000 on food and booze. Next weekend, same batch rolls in, and because they're all shitty bomb drunk, they must have blown $25,000, possibly each. They all got their spanking, lessons learned, and never came back. Worst hangover ever, waking up that you just threw away $25,000 in 1995 dollars, except the wife. The wife of Mayor McCheese started showing up nearly every night. At first, she'd just get sloppy, lose a bunch of money at blackjack. But after time, all the fancy rings started to disappear one by one, leaving a tan line. Then her expensive diamond/emerald earrings vanished. Her big expensive necklaces went too. Right before the end, her wedding band was gone. She had pawned off every bit of everything, like a single stupid blackjack was somehow going to lead her to riches, which she already had before she ruined her life. About 2 weeks after that, she lost her ass at the tables again, and went up to the ATM to get more cash. The ATM seized her credit card and she collapsed in a sobbing, screaming heap. She had pawned every piece of jewelry she owned, wrecked her marriage, maxed out all of her credit cards, and was bankrupt. The casino? Security dragged her ass outside to her car, where tribal cops were sitting waiting to pull her back out for trying to start a car like shit-faced drunk. The definition of white trash is financially, morally and intellectually bankrupt. Don't gamble, kids. Not a casino worker, but was in Vegas once, and my buddy wanted to go off the strip. So we head to a casino about a 15-minute drive away, and it was very large and open. It was late afternoon, early evening, and the place was kind of dead. We were at a blackjack table with only one other local. About 30 minutes later we get up to leave the blackjack table and cash out our minuscule winnings. We turn around and see a line of about 100 deep to get to the cashier. We are floored and wonder where all these people came from. Dealer said the casino was running a promotion that if you cashed your work check there you would get something extra in return. And all these people were lined up to get the extra. This was at a time when majority of people already had direct deposit, so the people cashing their physical work checks were the ones least likely to be able to afford it. Always stuck with me of just how sad it was to see people lining up to cash their work checks instead of rent or groceries. Or necessities. So I had a friend, who I'll call M for the sake of this story. M was a very close friend of mine. We met in secondary school and we did everything together. He was the one person in my life that I could honestly consider my best friend. We did everything together, played video games, movies, sleepovers, everything you normally do with your friends. What I didn't know was that M had a lot of trouble at home, a heavy-handed father and a mother who just didn't care. After we went to separate colleges we didn't speak as often but still stayed in touch and messaged each other at least once a week. I can remember vividly that one week I messaged him and didn't receive a reply all week. After countless messages and no response I decided to visit his parents' house to find out if he's okay. His sister answered the door and brought me in to talk. Turns out M has been dealing with his home issues by drinking at pubs, and it was at these pubs he developed a gambling habit. He went on to continuously spend more money than he had by overdrafting multiple bank cards and borrowing money. At some point he dropped out of college and went home. It was at home he had an argument with his parents over unpaid debts. This argument resulted in M packing his belongings and leaving. No one has heard from him since, and he has not been online on any of his social media since that date. Gambling can take its toll and destroy the lives of those that are already vulnerable, so please, take care of your friends who you think may have this issue. Wherever you are now, M, I miss you. I hope you are well and have found yourself a much more comfortable life. Not B, but a friend that was a dealer. Dude was there at the start of my friend's shift. My friends would of course make small talk and chit-chat with the players. As time was going by, this dude hasn't moved and just played the entire time. Eventually, this dude said that he needed to go at 8:30 p.m. to pick up his kid. My friend's shift ended at 9 p.m. As time got near 8:30, my friend would remind the guy that, "Hey, don't you need to pick up your kid?" The guy would respond, "Yeah, it's close by," or "just after I win a hand," or whatever. 8:30 comes, my friend would remind the guy it's 8:30 and the guy would repeat the same responses. Then 8:45, same thing. At 9 p.m. the guy was still there and my friend collects his tips and leaves. The next fucking day, when my friend shows up to his morning shift, that dude was still there. In the same clothes. My friend almost lost it. But he needed his paycheck, so he just went to his assigned table and worked. I don't really remember how the story ends or when the guy got up or left. But this was nearly 10 years ago when he told me. This was in Tunica. It may or may not have been a huge monumental loss, but I can't imagine that dude still has a family. That's a huge loss for me. Ex-casino worker here. Saddest story I heard was a guy was a wealthy engineering factory owner. Employed over 100 people and owned one of the largest machine shops in my state. Before working at the casino, working in the automotive trade, I even knew about this guy. He supplied parts to Ford and GM. He was huge and very well known. I remember dealing blackjack to this guy, in the lower end of the high roller room, and he was playing one box and minimum bet. It wasn't until later that I found out he lost it all to the casino. Everything. He lost his factory, his company, his house, his family. He choked down over $100 million AUD in about 10 years of playing blackjack, and now he sits as a lonely figure at the end of the lowest stakes table playing 3 or 4 hands an hour on a single bet at the table minimum. He was at one point the casino's #1 player. He once told me that some days, the only time he gets to eat is when he has earned enough points from the gambling table to go and get something from the cafe, which is ironic because he will still play $25 bets, which would be more than enough to buy something if he just stopped playing. He thinks that the only way to eat is to gamble. My ex worked for part of Rank. She was responsible for making sure all the slot machines at UK Rank casinos were working. So she sent out the maintenance staff as and when needed. As a result, we used to get invited to the casinos for dinner from time to time. Since she was an employee, we could not gamble, and everything was on the house. The casino managers would visit with us and chat about how things were going with the machines. They were all what the industry calls AWPs, amusement with prize. But the big losers were on the various tables. One manager, in Leeds, said that their biggest regular loser could dump £10,000 per night and was there 3 or 4 nights a week. He owned a chain of stores. Doctors were frequent visitors too. All their guests were losers in the long term, even if they had the occasional good night. The machines had a set payout rate. The only way to beat them was to have an inside line on where a new machine had been installed. They'd start out with a higher payout rate to make them popular. Once a gambler had won on a machine, they'd pour cash into it in the hope it was lucky for them. But when the machine had paid out a bunch, it would crank down the payout rate, all done automatically in software. The thing that amazed me was that people who installed and managed these things for a living, who knew the company always won, would put their own money in them. My uncle came to live with us in Vegas, a clean start etc., got a job at the local gas station, was good for a while, at least a year I think. Our gas stations have slot machines in them. Knock on the door of my parents' house around 9 a.m, cops are looking for him, guess he was alone at the end of his shift. He went over to the machines, put his own money in, lost it, went to the ATM in the store, took all his money out, played and lost that all, went over to the registers, took some money out to win his back, played that in the machine, lost it, went over and took the rest of the cash register money out, lost it immediately, took more money out of the time dispenser safe, lost that, then locked up the store and left. I guess he ran away. He was in his 30s or 40s, because he was scared of my mom, so he called their other sister in Cali, whose husband came and picked up my uncle a few days later. Turns out he also had a huge drug issue too, but we never noticed, never thought my relatives were rich enough to do cocaine, obviously no better now. While I was working there I saw a couple bad cases. We had buses that would bring people in from LA, and they both arrived nearly weekly on them. The buses came in on a Friday night, and left Sunday afternoon. The first was a lady that was a member of our elite club that got all kinds of free stuff, like food and rooms. Multiple times she made comments about not having money to buy basic items for her kids, like food and shoes. She had to have spent thousands per month to get that elite club. The second was an older gentleman that would sit at the $5 token slots and play continuously over his weekend there. The casino staff had to make him stop for a while when he started to get too drunk and encouraged him to go eat/sleep. They also required him to start wearing diapers, cause he kept peeing on the stools at the slot machines because he refused to get up and go to the bathroom.